In New York, they're trying to elect a communist, Zohran Mamdani, the guy who wants to defund the police, take over the stores and run the stores and have the people hand out goods. And when everything falls apart, it always does. It always works that way. It never has worked any other way. Anarchy and dictatorships prevail.
That was President Trump on Thursday calling New York Democratic mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani a communist. Those comments come after the president threatened to arrest Mamdani should he refuse to comply with federal immigration officials. Well, now New York Democrats seem to be rallying behind Mamdani, whose stunning primary win caused an immediate rift in the Democrat Party. Let's bring in Fox News contributor and American radio show host Richard Fowler. Richard, happy 4th of July. It's good to see you.
Happy 4th, John. And my heart and prayers go out to all those folks in Texas right now.
Yeah, it is absolutely just awful what has happened, especially to that Christian camp. Thank you, Richard. First, let's talk a little politics, though. So Zohran Mamdani, he's not a Democrat. He's a Democratic socialist. Is the city ready for this, do you think?
Look, I think you have to pay attention to the voters in the city and less around the personality. I think in the media we have this sort of, it's easy for us to focus our spotlight on this personality and not focus on what the voters of New York, like voters all across the country, told us last November. I think voters are telling us, whether it's by electing Mamdani or re-electing Donald Trump, that they're looking for something different. They're trying to figure out every night they go home how to make ends meet, and they're saying the current political system isn't working for them. And it's not only happening in New York. Take what's happening in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania right now. Right now, 9,000 workers in the city of Philadelphia, part of AFSCME District 33, are on strike, and they're not alone. 1,400 nurses have just authorized a strike in central Pennsylvania. They're not sort of part of this economic gains that we're seeing, and they're saying the ends aren't meeting, and on top of that, when we go to work, we are overworked and we're overburdened, and that's how we're looking for political alternatives that will speak to our pain and help us find real solutions to that.
All right, but Mamdani, he has said that he would like to see sort of socialized grocery stores in New York City. You think New York is ready for that kind of thing?
Listen, I always say this. I think when candidates run, they run and they speak in poetry. When they govern, they actually govern in prose. And so I think many of the things you hear him talking about are ideas that he wished he could implement in the city of New York. If he is elected, and that's an if, there's still another election where he has to face the current incumbent. We'll have to see there. The question is, will he be able to implement this, and will he get the votes of the New York General Assembly, as well as will he get the help of the governor of New York for many of the things he's asking for? It's going to require action from Albany, and we will have to see what's wait and see about that.
We opened this segment with some sound from President Trump criticizing Mamdani, and he has threatened to arrest him if he doesn't comply with federal law. The assumption is that has driven Mamdani deeper into the arms of I was about to say his fellow Democrats, but deeper into the arms of Democrats in general who might have been on the fence about him, but now they are inclined to support him. Do you see that as being the case?
Look, I think for both cases, both in the case of President Trump as well as in the case of Capitol Hill Democrats, Mamdani is a good figure, right? For Trump, he presents the perfect boogeyman for the argument that you've heard folks in Team Trump make for a long time. The Democratic Party wants to take this country all the way to the left. And I think for Democrats, what Mamdani represents is this finally some energy in the Democratic Party after the November election where they were shellacked. So how do we get this energy? And for Trump, how do we use this guy as a boogeyman? And I think for both, for the Democrats at least, I think it's important for them to figure out, why did the voters vote for this? Why did the voters vote for him? What made him so popular? What made him electrify voters in New York? And I got to tell you, it's because he spoke common language, because he was willing to speak off the cuff without a teleprompter or without a lectern, because he was willing to go to places that other Democratic candidates wouldn't go. That's what made him a winner here. And I think, like I said, when I started this segment, when there are folks out on the picket line saying that a living wage isn't working, that's where the Democratic Party's got to be, because that's where their voters are. Those are voters that they lost in the last election.
Newt Gingrich is not only a former politician, but also a historian. He had this to say about the prospect of Mayor Mamdani. Listen.
I think the Democrats are trapped They have a whole bunch of policies they inherited from Biden, which they can't sustain. They have a new face of the Democratic Party emerging in New York with Mamdani. They are in a situation where they have no solutions, they have no answers.
He is not the only Republican who is saying that Mamdani is the best thing that could happen to the Republican Party because his policies are so extreme. What do you say, Richard?
Look, I remember, and listen, I think Newt has a storied history here in our nation's capital. With that being said, I remember tapes of Newt Gingrich saying the same thing about the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare and how it was going to destroy our healthcare system, how it was going to turn things upside down, how it was going to make more Americans sick. And here's the truth. More Americans think the Affordable Care Act is unpopular. And one of the reasons why Trump's big, beautiful bill was so unpopular with the American people is the cuts that were going to be in Medicaid. Many of those cuts that are cutting programs that were created under the Affordable Care Act. So I think the proof is going to be in the pudding here. And once again, Mamdani has not been elected yet. He has just won a Democratic primary. There's still another election to go.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Richard Fowler.
We will.
Thank you.
Good to see you, John. Take
You
good
too.
care.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.